because David John Walker is a very English name, right? So,
Mm.
so, so anything I can do just to kind of um, have my name slightly different, use my full name, helps, I think.
Yeah, David John Walker. So it's a name. I feel like it's two very common names, but when they're put together for some reason, I maybe you hear it a lot as in like names that you have, but as in a producer or an artist, I've never heard that. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so I produce as an artist. I produce under Imperial, and then
Yeah.
for my production music, David John Walker. So it is what it is. But like you say, put two common names together, it's a bit different. It stands out a bit more. So
We'll get
that's
we'll
where I'm
get
at.
into that as the conversation goes, because I'm also having a little bit of a debate about that. But man, look, I just I listened to your stuff a few weeks ago, and I also listened to it now to refresh myself, and it's the drums are so distinct. Like there's something about your sound that just sounds so good for TV and film, and everything that is in your reel is so freaking tight. It's like, oh my god, for me, it's like it's almost like, wow, I want my music to be like that kind of thing. Which I don't say it to everyone. Like I don't think I've ever said it on the podcast, but it's like when I heard your music to film, it's just so good. It's so clean and so mature. I think mature is the word. Um, and I want to know how this maturity came about. So I feel like also this is what the conversation would be about, probably maturity in music. I just off the cuff, it's just what comes up. But David John Walker, tell me everything from the beginning. Where did music start for you? Tell me about all your shifts and all your what led to what you are doing right now, because there's a lot to talk about and unpack. So let's just start from there.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, firstly, thanks for the compliments. Yeah, that's awesome to hear that the music's kind of resonating, and you're like, producer to producer, you're picking up on those kind of production styles, and to an extent, you kind of, I think, with music production, you a lot of it is uh, what's the word? It's kind of intuition. It's intuitive the way you produce. You produce. Um, you're you've got a background of influences. None of us create anything in a vacuum,
Yeah.
and I suppose I kind of pour all of that almost unconsciously, subconsciously into my music. So no, thank you. I appreciate the compliments. Uh, I, like many kids, started off. I had piano lessons, went onto the keyboard, and then my parents found a teacher um, who was also a composer, and this is back in the 90s. He hooked up Cubase onto our computer at home, and he was showing me how to record MIDI, how to get music from keyboard into the computer, and my kind of love for production grew from there. And that was I was probably, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 or so.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, the short story is, through many kind of um, twists and turns and kind of different teachers along the way, that was my thing. Like I went more down the production route than the kind of classically trained musical route. I did theory. I played cornet, and was up at kind of grade 6 level. Okay as a kid, but production was what grabbed me. And then I got into hip hop, and hearing uh, hearing DJ scratching and sampling, and just kind of trying to figure out how are producers making these beats. I gravitated towards hip hop groups that had a DJ producer in. So groups like De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest, Q-Tip, Jurassic 5, Newmark, Cut Chemist, then instrumental producers, Turntablist, DJ Shadow, and my teenage years were, a lot of them spent figuring out how, like, this is kind of pre-YouTube, right? I'm that old. Figuring out uh, how hip hop producers are making beats. Like, where are they finding their samples from? How are they dropping their samples? What equipment are they using? How does it kind of like sound so kind of raw and powerful, but like unpolished, and kind of there's an aesthetic there that really kind of drew me in.
Mhm.
I went off to do music technology at university. That almost killed my love for music production. We ended up doing a whole load of kind of academic music, which for me, I just wanted to go and learn how to make good music and how to produce records. But we ended up doing a whole load of kind of it was like music concrete stuff, and acousmatic music, which I didn't really get on with. After
What music?
university, so music concrete is like early sampling. So I
Okay.
probably should have loved it, but early sampling. There's a guy called Pierre Schaeffer who, I think it's back in the 40s, maybe 50s, was experimenting with tape technology and recording. A lot of it is like industrial sounds, recording industrial sounds and looping them with early reel to reel, mono reel to reel machines. And the Beatles had a lot of their influence on their kind of tape looping from this guy. Anyway, like we went right back to the roots. I mean, it's kind of interesting from an academic exercise, but in terms of like making making hip hop records, making pop records, making dance records, whatever it might be, it just seemed like, when you're 18, 19, 20, it just seems so far removed. Um, anyway, I got a teacher training degree, went on to teach music technology at A level. I'm based in Cambridge, and taught that for 11 years. And then 2019, I left teaching to pursue full-time freelance production music. So yeah, so it's been 4 coming up to 5 years that I've been full-time music, working in production music. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. So, um, how did production music start for you? Did it start in 2019, or how did you discover about it, and how did it come to be what it is right now for you, which is the bread and butter?
Yeah. So I around 2013, 2014, I was producing a bunch of remixes and throwing them up online. So I'd take an acapella off a hip hop record and remake a beat, maybe add some cuts over the top, scratching, and I'd throw it up on SoundCloud. I'd send it to the artist, post it on Facebook or whatever. Um, and that, doing those remixes, I was picked up by a label in the States called Elect, and they asked me to do some remixes of some of their catalog. That ended up to me being signed with them and putting music out. So I put music out under the alias Imperial, and Elect have been kind of moving in a sync space for a while, and they were pitching some of the artist releases via sync agencies for placements. And I think, I can't remember what the first placement was, but we had a bunch of kind of placements. Me and my collaborator Kinetic, he's an MC over here in the UK, and we had some placements with Hennessy, JanSport, McDonald's, and that kind of just opened my eyes up to the idea of music being synced to picture. And then one day, I had an email come in via my website from EMI, and they were asking me if I'd be interested in doing some remixes of their radio catalog. And it kind of just went from there, really. So I grabbed that opportunity, and then the next thing was me and Kinetic were working on an album for EMI where um, we had kind of carte blanche of their green sleeve KPM library. They said, look, we've digitized pretty much the whole library. You can sample whatever you want out of this legendary production music library. Um, Grab what you want, like as long as it's not been like sampled to death already. You can use whatever you want. So we
Wow.
produced an album. We got a few um, guest verses in, and I think it was off the back of that album in particular that my name, I suppose, just became a bit more known within the kind of production music space. I started working with a company out in LA, Shutdown Music, and yeah, it just kind of it grew from there. And then I think as yeah, as you do the best you can, you put out your music, you hope publishers take it and pick it up, and I suppose in a sense, like, good work just brings more good work. Just trying to stay kind of consistent, on time, be easy to work with, and it's just kind of grown from there, really.
Hmm. It's interesting that you say, because a good friend and a collaborator, that's also from the UK, Jamie Shield, he was also speaking about being easy to work with. Um, and I'm interested because, of course, like working with a bigger label and working with, I mean, off the bat with people who are pretty well versed, waiting game is a big thing. So how um how do you stay easy to work with when there are so many people who you have to wait for?
Um,
And do you resonate
so
with a question? Because you don't have to resonate with it. It's just
so
like
so wait for, as in maybe collaborators that I'm waiting for, or
collaborators, labels, replies, just replies.
yeah. I've to be honest, I've been in a fortunate position that there's mainly there's possibly only one or two collaborators way, 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 way back that were kind of tricky to work with, and I suppose I've just learned that when working with other people, trying to give people as much information as possible that's going to
Mm,
be helpful for the collaboration. So,
mm,
um, really briefing out the song in terms of what you're after, what the publisher is after, keywords, um, and setting expectations in terms of deadlines, setting expectations in terms of what upfront pay is going to be, the royalty split, as much transparency as possible that's going to be helpful for the collaboration, to
mhm,
both show that kind of you're serious about this, the publisher's serious about this. There's potential for this to generate residual income that's going to that come in further down the line. Um, so I think expectations is really key. On the publisher side, I've been really fortunate that I I really haven't had to work in a way that I am sending out speculative emails to publishers, and waiting to hear back. Um, the It's probably almost exclusively the stuff I've been doing has been briefed out to me. So there's always been a kind of a process of first initial demo deadline and final deliveries deadlines, and there's I haven't really been in a situation where I've been
mm.
waiting from that point of view. I've been fortunate to have some great relationships within the publishing sphere. Yeah.
So from EMI, did it just like did collaboration just roll from there, or how did it go for you?
So it kind of, I suppose at the time I was like, oh, this could blow up. This is a yeah, this is a major production music label. This could really go go somewhere, you kind of start dreaming. You're like, oh, maybe I'll be quitting my day job next week, and
Mm.
all this kind of stuff. It was a bit of a slow burn for a year or two. Um, the odd kind of track here and there that I did with EMI, and I got picked up by Shutdown Music, who were producing albums for Universal in the States, for Warner, for Red Bull, and
They're an
I did a
agency.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I did a whole load of work with them, and it was a very, very kind of well thought out operation in terms of I didn't have to find collaborators. The guy Ty, who was running the agency, he would hook up a producer with a collaborator, and I would make a beat that would then get sent to an MC. He would record vocals that would come back to me. I'd either mix it or there'd be somebody else mixing the vocals, sending them back to me. So the kind of the production chain was fairly fast,
Mm.
and that just allowed me to get a whole load of music out into the production music sphere quite quickly, which then developed other relationships. So I've also there's a guy who I used to skate with years ago when we were teenagers who I got back in contact with. He at the time was working with Universal. He's a producer with Universal over here down in London, and we met up. I started doing some work with him, and then I've started doing some work with the other producers at Universal. So I've had a whole load of work through them. I've been working with a company called Molecular Sound over here, License Lab out in the States, West One over here, and I don't like I don't know how it happens. I guess I guess producers of publishers are looking for new music, or they have something back in their catalog that maybe I've done. They say, oh, like this guy produced this, he would be a good fit for this next project we're working on. Yeah, so I've been quite fortunate in terms of those relationships and how they've grown. um I haven't necessarily kind of cold emailed or anything like that. They've just kind of grown organically, um, which I'm super thankful for, because I'm not somebody, like, I'm quite kind of introverted. So the kind of the idea of going out and pitching myself and selling myself and all the rest of it, um, just kind of it might be a bit awkward for me to do it.
Mm.
So yeah, so I've been super grateful for those kind of opportunities that have just come almost seemingly out of nowhere to an extent. Um,
So, what do you think it was going back to having something like something a print in your music? What do you think it was about you that that made you be approached by these labels? Because again, like let's take my personal story. I've been in sync for a few years, but fully in it for like 3 years, fully invested in it, not full time. Only this past year I've been coming full time, but only now in the last, let's say, 6 months I've started working with the big boys, with the bigger labels that you basically were approached by. But what do you think made you so different from all the thousands of producers they listen to a month?
I don't know. I don't. I don't know. I think initially one of the things I've got a friend over in the States who um, he's in the kind of the promotion world, and he always bangs on about, like, artists, get a website, get a website, get a website. Like, you can't rely on social media. Who knows, like, what's going to happen to Twitter? Like, we all saw what happened to Twitter recently, right? Who knows what's going to happen to Instagram? Who knows what's going to happen to TikTok? Like, get a website. And that was my initial contact with EMI. It was through my website. and it just kind of happened that at the time, and I think this might still be the case, but at the time, if you were to Google UK hip hop producer, I would be within the first 5 hits on Google.
Wow.
And I think that was through my artist releases. That was through kind of various bits of SEO. Nothing that I'd really worked on, but the label Elect that I was putting out music through, I think it would often be Imperial UK hip hop producer. So they're over in the States. So it kind of like it makes sense to say, okay, he's a UK hip hop producer. There's something
Yeah.
um, uh, a bit different for a States audience, and I think that kind of just generated a whole load of SEO when my music was being posted on. This is back in the blog days, being posted on blogs. That created SEO kickbacks to my website, which then kind of boosted my um, rankings within Google. I mean, it's kind of like a happy accident um, in that sense from the get go. And then I guess you do work with somebody. You work well. You hit the brief. You're personable. You're easy to work with. You hit deadlines. And when you've done that once with a new publisher, um, then the relationship can grow from there. Really, you've started off on a good foot. So I guess there's a there's an element of kind of humility, like not coming in with a big ego. You're there to serve the brief. You're there to serve the end result, like the picture. Your music is for another purpose. You are. It's not necessarily me. That there's an element that I can express myself as a producer, like that's going to come out kind of naturally. But also, can I make music that serves another purpose as opposed to it just being kind of like an artist output where it's, this is me, this is what I do. If you don't like it, like, leave it. There's a kind of, actually, no, we're working together as a team to make a product that is then gonna serve a bigger kind of artistic purpose, an emotional purpose within uh, being synced to picture. And I think it's kind of having that end goal in view is gonna help you, um, yeah, help as you approach production music to think, okay, well, what is the end goal of this? What is the purpose of this piece of music? Um, yeah, I almost like get myself out of the way and just hit the brief and work hard.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like, huh, it's so what you're talking to is kind of moving out of your own way in one way, moving out of your own way, but also being nobody. So like it's so interesting because I'm watching Game of Thrones right now. Okay, like don't kill me for it, but I've just started watching Game of Thrones and I've been binging it. Um, and there is a girl there that is part of everybody thinks she's dead basically, and she goes to this monastery, and the whole purpose of her being there is becoming nobody, is being no one. And it's so interesting, like, because uh, um her story is so like the way that she approaches it is, she's like, no, I'm Arya Stark, like, what the fuck. But then he's like, no, you're nobody. And you need to understand, you need to get back to being nobody basically. And it's not what they're saying exactly, but that's the purpose of it, to understand that in the end of the day, we are a part of something, of a for that case it was maybe like a destiny, or like, being a good assassin or whatever. You have to be nobody. um and I think it's also right about like music assassins, right? Like there are the people who are in the front of it, who are presenting it, like the Ariana Grandes and these people who are the presenters of the music, who are really good at it, and are there for a reason. And there are the people who need to stay faceless, and that's okay too, as long, of course,
Yeah,
as you get whatever you all the credits and the back end from it, which is also awesome because you don't get harassed in the street, but that's a
yeah,
different matter. But what I'm saying is, it's a long-winded rant, but I'm just saying that a lot of the times I feel like that artist element comes out and wants to be somebody. Like, I want to be someone, I want to do this. And um that's what I feel like detachment, a lot of the people have in the world right now, is like they think that people cannot do life without them. And I'm going like, it goes a bit deeper, but people think that without their solution, other people cannot go without them. So they say, do this diet, or do music like this, or do I will coach you to be confident like this. And there's all these cookie cutter methods, where I feel like the most peace comes from the approach that you are presenting, which is just be. Stop trying to stop trying to compete, and understand your lane and go there. And that's what I feel like you're speaking to, even though you're not you're very humble about it, you know. I feel like that's what you did best. You were kind of not, you moved out of your own way. You let yourself do your thing, and then the magic was kind of, the way was kind of paved for you. Do you resonate with that?
yeah, yeah. I think so. I think there's a the one thing I've kind of reflected on to an extent is that when you move from being an artist to producing production music, there is a shift in mindset. And some people can run with that, and some people find that a struggle, because you are not gonna production music. You aren't. It's not about kind of getting yourself out there as an artist. You are producing music to serve a purpose, to an extent. Like there's a sort of functionality about it. So the way you produce isn't so open ended as it could be as an artist, where you can uh, go off in many different kind of musical directions, and you can like have huge kind of switch ups within a song which completely change the emotion and are quite jarring, but that's what you want the listener to feel, right? And maybe that's what you're experiencing at the moment. Your kind of emotions are all over the place, so you've got this kind of creative output that reflects you, that is going to be um, absorbed by the listener. But within the production music sphere, there are certain conventions, there's certain um, uh, production techniques, sting endings, edit points, getting quickly into the track. You're not having long intros, maybe, 4 bars and then you're into the chorus or straight into the verse, whatever it might be. So there's kind of conventions that don't allow um, uh, for the creativity that an artist might want to work with. So I think there's a kind of a mind shift that 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 needs to happen as you move from one kind of space into the other. And if you're in both spaces, I've got kind of a foot in both spaces at the moment. It can be quite confusing. You can start producing. I can start producing my artist output, um, with a kind of production music hat on, and think, oh, this needs to have a sting ending or whatever. But it doesn't need to have a sting ending if I'm producing it as my kind of imperial alias. Um, so I think, yeah, I think recognizing that this is not about you. This is not about your um, uh, expressing yourself purely as an artist, but you're trying to connect an emotion and trying to drive that emotion all the way through a track,
Hmm.
so that it's going to be Syncable, and it's almost like I think, okay, I haven't seen the final piece of art yet. I'm like part of the process. The final piece of art is going to be when this piece of music gets synced to
Mm,
picture, and that's where the emotion's going to be. That's
wow.
where the connection for the audience is going to be. So
Wow.
it doesn't stop with me bouncing out stems and cut downs and all the
Yeah.
rest of it. It's the end product of when the music gets synced to picture, and then somebody consumes that and watches it. Um, and without that music, that picture isn't going to be as powerful, because music is going to tell the consumer who's sat in their living room or in the cinema. The music is going to tell them what they should feel, and I think that's where the kind of the power of the art comes in. And that's kind of unknown in production music, because you don't know where it's going to end up, you don't know where it's
Right.
going to get placed, but you're further back in the process.
So, okay, let me take it back a little bit. So, when you write music nowadays, do you put it to image? Like, what's your process? Of course, I would assume there's like some sort of like a reference or something like that.
Yeah.
But do you actually put it? How do you test it to know that it works?
Yeah, so I'll often just like pull up YouTube, and I have NBA footage running in the background, or like I love GoPro. Like GoPro put
Oh
out
yeah,
some amazing like 4K footage.
yeah.
It's like really quick edits. Um, so like really punchy drums, quick edits, drum fills, edit points, dropouts, maybe like 808 slides, whatever it might be, stuff that's gonna just like pick up on little moments. Now, I'm not necessarily working it to that video at all, in terms of when those moments happen, but I've just got it in the background as kind of like, okay, this track actually needs to be 4 BPM, 5 BPM faster, because
Mm,
it's just feeling a bit slow for kind of sports edits. Um, and I think it's just kind of leaning into whatever emotion you're working with. Like if it's like hyped up energy, or if it's, I've just done a couple of tracks, um, uh, which on an album called Poignant Pop. It's kind of, yeah, like sad boy pop. It's like, can we lean into that energy and that emotion as much as we can and bring that out in production? So big reverbs, delays, sparse spaces. Um, Nothing's kind of too driving, but it's, it's kind of laid back. Um, so let the emotion of the song like really lean into that, and really push into that, whatever sphere that is. um so I think those kind of two things, have stuff, I just have stuff running in the background. Does this fit with this, whatever it might be, Premier League footage, NBA footage, whatever it might be, GoPro. And also, is the emotion that this song needs, am I really leaning into that emotion as much as I can? um because that is going to have a biggest impact when it gets synced later on. You're going to be pulling out the main emotion that comes through that song.
wow. So yeah, so you're basically making music to image. Like you're you're writing the music, and as you're writing, you have like something that you'd want it to fit on a monitor, and you see if it has enough emotion in it to fit it. I'm gonna try this because I haven't been doing it like this. My method is a bit more tedious and it takes more time. So I think like that is actually a great solution, um, to kind of figure out uh, if if it's in the realm, if it's in the realm.
I think that's it exactly. Like, is it in the ballpark of where it needs to be?
Yeah.
um and I think sometimes, like one of my kind of early reflections from production music is, sometimes you can kind of kid yourself that it is, when it really isn't.
Right.
um you kind of, you might stick some footage over the top of it, and you think, oh yeah, this could work in this situation, this could work in that situation, and there might be like a one-off chance that it does work in a certain situation. um, but it's not necessarily the most kind of conventional way. Like, let's say you've got quite a slow hip hop tune, like that could work in a montage for um, so, yeah, some live sports. The montage is kind of
Yeah.
super slow mo and all the rest of
Yeah.
it. Um, Now, how many times does a super slow mo montage happen in a sports show? It doesn't. It's not going to happen as much as
Right.
like the fast paced, quick edits.
Right.
Um, so yeah, kind of leaning into to an extent, leaning into the conventions that are already there
Yeah.
um, within the visual side of the industry, and trying to maximize and work into those.
Yeah. Wow. So okay, I'm interested in another thing. So let's say someone wants to work with the bigger boys that you're working with, like the EMI, the Universals, the whatever. Um, and I'm putting a little cliff, like a little note on us talking about how you kind of made it your full time, because we all know that it doesn't take one day
Yeah.
to make that happen. So before we get into that, if somebody was, let's say you were right now in the position where right now it's 2024, and you have zero syncs, you want to get into the production music area, and you're not lucky to get hit up by all these big boys. You got hit up by in the beginning. What would be your starting point? Like, what would you start doing if you wanted to go head first into this world?
Oh, that's a good question. What would you start with? So there's two, like there's a few different routes within sync music. Like there is the production music side. There's also the sync agency side, um, which would be if you were already releasing stuff as an artist, you sign up with a sync agency that would directly be in communication with music supervisors and try and place your tracks. You're going to get bigger fees for those placements, um, but they're not going to happen as often. Um, and There would be a third option. There might be more than this, but there could be a third option, which would be you directly contacting music supervisors, developing relationships with music supervisors, and feeding your music um, directly to them. So I suppose there's three different routes. There is the royalty free route as well, um, which I would probably avoid. Um, that would be my advice. And the yeah, so how you get into it, I don't know. I've unfortunately or fortunately for me, I've never had to be in that position. I've been blessed with um, the opportunities that have come my way. I produce good music, like work on your craft, produce music that is gonna um, work for, as we've just been talking about, kind of that emotional connection. Produce, like, show that you can produce music that is fit for purpose, like that is going to be syncable, that has edit points in it, that has correct sting endings, and like is really dynamic, is really punchy. It doesn't just kind of uh, stay. It's not just a loop with a few kind of variations here and there. It's really exciting, and um, and I guess pitch it. Maybe you could pitch it to um, publishers, or you could start working with videographers yourself and see
Mm,
if your music works in kind of new content with guys that are just kind of getting on the ladder of um, filmmaking. Maybe doing shorts. It might be that you've got somebody local there, a filmmaker, and they're looking for some music, and you can kind of build up your chops that way.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I guess there's no silver bullet. like we were saying earlier, follow this diet, it's going to change your life. Like there's no silver bullet, right?
Yeah.
Um, and to an extent, some of it is just you, for whatever reason, you're in the right place at the right time, and things pop off.
That's a big one. That's a big one. 100%. I feel like there are little things that that I mean, I feel like and I think that's the theme. It's like moving out of your way. When you move out of your way, which is a very hard concept for me to grasp, but it's a thing that I'm working on consciously. Especially like doing things like meditation or things like that. It's just like all it's about in the end of the day is being able to move out of your own way, right? When your mind is thinking, when your inner voice is saying like crazy shit, like you can't do this, you're not worth that, and all that kind of stuff that comes up. It's just which is like objectively not wrong in the end, and not right in the end of the day, because you can do all these things. So I think just like all it's about is moving out of one's own one of one's way, moving out of one's way, because there are so many ways to go about this. But um, what you were speaking to, like agencies, like the mixture of agencies, libraries, and libraries, and what were we speaking about? Supervisors.
Yeah.
Um, how did you go about this in the first years? So like 2019, were you working with like mostly upfront fees and doing like the buyout thing? Like what was your what and I guess when I asked the first question, what I wanted to know is what would your strategy be in order to do it full time, to be where you are today? So
Yeah, that's a good question. I think kind of just backtracking before that point, something to add on the previous bit. I think you're holding things lightly is really important, and it's I'm same for me. I'm a Christian. I will pray about things, and I will try and hold things lightly. Like if it happens, great. If it doesn't, it is not the end of the world. um, and that kind of having that kind of grounding helps, so things just don't eat you alive if you don't get opportunities, or certain things don't pull off. And then the kind of the conversation that we're having about making that kind of move, and what would you do to get out of a space from full-time work, part-time work, whatever it is, into music. I think part of it is being ready. So when we were talking about like just getting your chops up, and kind of, are you producing music that could be synced? Like are you ready for the opportunities when they come, as opposed to when the opportunities come, are you going to get ready for them? And I think that's kind of important to work on your craft, so you already have something that is licensable, um, and is going to work. And then from that point on, I was teaching music technology A level, so I was teaching music production. So I was in music production every day. Um, and towards the end of my time teaching, I was teaching 4 days a week, maybe 3.5 at one point. It kind of fluctuated. So that gave me just a little bit of time. I had a stable income, but it gave me a little bit of time to focus on music. And I was working with Ty over at Shutdown Music, and we had a conversation on the phone. And he said, "Look, um, I know what your situation is at the moment. Basically I can get you as much work as you can handle. So how many tracks do you reckon you can do a year?" Um, and it was at that point that I thought, okay, I've got an opportunity here. I can either stay in teaching and I will have to turn down this opportunity for production music, or I can quit teaching and go for production music. And as it kind of naturally happened, as I was teaching, I was the last kind of year or so, like I was beginning to lose the love of teaching, which is never good for me. It's not good for the students either. So it was like, I came to a natural point where I needed a change anyway. This opportunity came along, and yeah, we were pumping out a whole load of tracks. I did somewhere near 100 in the first year from 2019, and yeah, the kind of the opportunities came from there. So then there's a long game. I'm working with upfront fees. The royalties take a while to come in. I remember reading an article that was like heavily influential on me. It's by a guy called Dan Graham. It was published in Sound on Sound magazine. He did this kind of 4-part um, series that was all about production music. He runs the label Gothic Storm, hugely successful label, particularly in the trailer sphere. And he was talking about his experience going into production music, and he was giving some figures. I can't remember exactly what they are, but something along the lines of you should expect for one album, if it's getting licensed, to be picking up about $5,000 a year per album, um, which
If it's in
wasn't
the right
necessarily,
place,
yeah, that
assuming
wasn't
it's in the right
necessarily
place.
my experience
Yeah.
straight away. But it was like, okay, to an extent, it's a numbers game.
Hmm.
You need quality, like it's quality numbers. It's not just numbers. The music has
Right.
to be syncable. It needs to be quality.
Right.
But it isn't the case that you can just produce one album and that's gonna
Live off it.
carry you through. Exactly.
Mm.
Um, so I was living off up front for a while. I've got a family, a wife, 2 kids. My wife is a teacher. She was amazing, so supportive of this move, and it helped. She had a stable income coming in, so we knew what was coming in every month, and
Yeah.
then mine was kind of a bit more sporadic, up and down.
Yeah.
And it took, I would say, it took about 3 years, maybe 3.5 years, until for the royalties to really start kind of kicking in. Um,
Mm. So they bought
and
out your tracks, and then
yeah,
like
so
you got
yeah,
royalties
so the
from it.
deal in America is quite different to the UK. So in
Yeah.
America, it's all buyouts, so the upfront tends to be a little bit higher,
Yeah.
um, but you don't retain any mechanicals.
Yeah.
And in the UK, the upfront will be a little lower, but you will retain some of the mechanical. So you'll always get your PRS royalties, but any placements where there's a mechanical payment in the UK, I will receive 50% if it's just me. If it's a couple of us, 25%
Yeah.
each.
But if
Um,
it's but they don't, like, if you get a sync fee, it's not, you don't necessarily see anything from it.
Not for the stuff that has been put out
Bought out.
through, yeah, not the buyouts.
Yeah.
The stuff in the UK that isn't buyout, I will see it.
Yeah.
But that's all recoupable against the advance of
Yeah.
the upfront.
Mm. Yeah.
So again, that takes a few years. It took a few years for the advances to be paid off on the mechanical side to start seeing income. So that basically there was a huge lag. Like there was a
Yeah.
3 to 4 year lag,
Yeah.
and I mean now fortunately I'm at the position that the royalties are such that they are pretty much a salary.
Mm.
So the royalties I could live off the royalties. I'm still kind of so new in terms, I don't have 10 years behind me in this, so I don't know what the kind of the fluctuations are further down the line.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm at the stage now that the stuff that I read in that article like 6-7 years ago, it's like, oh right, okay, now I can
Wow.
see, now I can see how
Shout
this
outs to
is.
Dan Graham.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
definitely coming on the podcast. I don't know when, but it's gonna
yeah. You should,
happen.
you should get him. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah. He's been mentioned here quite a few times, and on this podcast, and a few composers that work with him, and then it's just like things. It feels like life is putting us closer to each other by the day, but you just never know. As you said, like I'm gonna kind of let it happen and see what's when is the question that I'm
Yeah,
asking,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you know. But that's amazing, that's amazing to hear, that this was your experience. I very much resonate with your story, and with the way that things are going for you. I think that you're kind of like, you're, I want to say a big bro version to what to what I aspire to look like in a few years. So that's a great thing to kind of to see that you've actually come to the point where these numbers make sense. Because yeah, sometimes, I mean, like, you know, what he speaks to, his kind of whole, in his book, it's like the 52 cues kind of mentality, where like make 50 cues a year, 52 cues a year, in about 7 8 years you're gonna have a six-figure income if everything went right for you. um yeah, but you know, like other people say different things here, you know, like other even label owners are saying, yeah, you know, like the landscape's changing, and you're gonna need more than that, probably, like in coming in the coming years. So, and you know, like with everything that's happening technologically, I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see, like, how do you stick out
yeah.
like a sore thumb? How do you go into labels that actually succeed? And you
Mhm.
know, like there's the bigger label versus the smaller boutique label thing that is
Yeah,
that is also happening. Like, how
yeah,
do you
yeah, yeah.
make that decisions and stuff like that? Today, how does your workflow look like? Do you mainly do one style? Do you mainly work with one library? How does your time get divided these days?
Yeah, so I also do some kind of mixing and mastering for artists. So I that's mainly through the label Elect in the States. So probably, I mean, that's like 10-15% of my year is probably spent on that, and the bread and butter is production music. And it I work with, so briefs will come in, and I will plot deadlines and see what I need to do by when, and what that means for how many tracks I need to do each week. And when I'm getting collaborators on board, who am I going to collab with, and what deadlines are going to be helpful for them. That's going to give them enough time to work on tracks. And yeah, so I use Notion, which is a like a time management app. So I just kind of plot everything out on there. And um, yeah, I think my my time is, yeah, it's probably 80-90% production music, working predominantly with 3 or 4 publishers. I do the most of my work comes from Universal over here in the UK, and that will be from a variety of different producers at Universal. So different projects. So there'll be stuff that we do for certain sports events that are coming up. So we've just done a project for March Madness, and stuff will be uh, yeah. When the World Cup came, I was working with 3 different publishers doing stuff for the World Cup a few years ago. Um, so sometimes it's kind of looking forward to different sports events that are happening, maybe Olympics, whatever it might be. Some of it is like, okay, these styles are like huge within the industry at the moment. We need some albums like this, so let's
Mm.
work on some songs for these different styles. Some of it will be um, doing Christmas trap tracks in like July, getting ready. Well, not even that. So last year it was Christmas trap in about February, so it was all right. I could still remember Christmas at that point. And yeah, so it's kind of production music. The calendar that I'm working with is sometimes dictated by stuff that's events that are coming up. within the global calendar or the sporting calendar. And sometimes it's styles that are working well. Sometimes it's just like these tracks. I'm doing some stuff for Beacon, who Beacon Music. They are
Beacon Light? No.
they're called Beacon Music. They're connected to Banijay. Banijay have their own TV network. Um, so yeah, I've been working with them a bunch the last couple of years, and yeah, it's uh, hip hop trap stuff that just works really well in reality TV and sports programming. Um, so some of it is like, okay, we need more of the same. These tracks are really working well. Let's get more of them. Some of it is we've got these events coming up. Let's roll with them and pitch towards these sporting events coming up. And some of them are here are the big styles that are working well within the kind of pop music industry.
Yeah.
Let's have some of that.
Um. So okay, we I try to keep the interviews at an hour. I wanted to know, like, is there any last like piece of advice? There's so much in this interview. I feel like for people to kind of dissect, and you were generous to give so many names. So the labels you mentioned are gonna be bombarded even more than they are probably now. But no, but for real, I'm super grateful for you being so open and talking like that, because I think that a lot of people who listen are gonna take so much from this, and a lot of just I feel like they're gonna take the the feeling like they can do this. And so I wanted to know if there's any like last piece of advice you'd like to leave people with.
I think just work on your music, hold it lightly, um, put your music out there, put yourself out there, and um, yeah, try and serve the greater purpose, like that end goal of the music being synced. You don't know where it's going to be synced, but that is almost the piece of art that you're aiming towards.
Mm,
So try and serve that purpose. Um, yeah, research, see what works good, work on production, work on your music, and see what happens. Enjoy the ride.
hey, enjoy the ride. Thank you so much for coming on, my friend.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.